You should consider yourself lucky that I'm still letting you contribute. My grandson didn't invite me to his wedding, but he did send me a bill for $150,000 to pay for his dream party and honeymoon. I just smiled and turned his dream into a nightmare. I'm glad you're here. Stay until the end and tell me what city you're watching from. I want to know how far my story has traveled. I woke up at 5:30 in the morning. That hour when my legs pull me out of bed on their own. No alarm clock needed. The small kitchen in my house was the same as always, with the smell of coffee rising from the old clay coffee pot, bitter but familiar. I threw the window wide open to let in the cool morning air. Then I went out to the patio to get the newspaper, just as I have for years. On the concrete, still damp from the night's dew, I saw a cream-colored envelope, thick, smooth, lying there in silence. The handwriting in black ink was careful, and it bore my name, Mrs. Caroline Miller. I turned it over and saw the return address, Ethan M. Davis, with an address in Beverly Hills, California. My grandson. I didn't open it right away. I just placed it on the kitchen table. I fried a few corn tortillas, sliced a perfectly ripe avocado, and arranged it on a plate. I sat down to eat alone, like every morning. The coffee had already gone cold, and I didn't even notice. I ate slowly, gazing at the small yard in front of the house. After breakfast, I washed my hands, wiped the kitchen table clean, and only then did I sit down to open the envelope. Inside was a letter-sized sheet of paper, printed in color, with the elegant logo of an event planning company in the top corner. I read it line by line. Wedding in Maui, $90,000. 10-day honeymoon in Venice, $60,000. Total, $150,000. I did the math in my head, a number that made me freeze. At the very bottom, a single line was handwritten in blue ink, in Ethan's script. You should feel lucky I'm still letting you contribute to this. No letter, no wedding invitation, not a single word of explanation. I held the paper, my hand trembling slightly, but it wasn't from anger, it was just shock. I picked up the phone and dialed the number for Leo, my son, Ethan's father. I called once, no answer. I called again, same thing. On the third try, I left the message. Leo, your mother needs to talk to you. Call me. But I knew he wouldn't call back anytime soon. I changed into my old linen outfit, grabbed my bicycle, and pedaled to Betty's grocery store at the Central Market. Betty saw me and smiled. At the market so early, Caroline? What's new? I just gave a faint smile and replied, Can I borrow your printer for a minute? She nodded and pulled her old printer out from a corner of the counter. I made 2 copies of the invoice, folded them carefully, and put them in my bag. On the way back, I sat on a bench in front of the church, in silence, for a few minutes. Rose, the woman who sells flowers nearby, saw me and waved. Caroline, why so serious? Did something happen? I nodded just to move the conversation along, and replied, Nothing, just resting a bit. I didn't want to explain anything or be asked any more questions. Around noon, Leo showed up at the house with a bag of fruit, some mangoes, a few oranges. He walked into the kitchen and immediately saw the open envelope on the table, the invoice peeking out. I didn't say a word, just pushed the paper toward him. Leo picked it up, glanced at it, folded it, and set it back on the table. He looked toward the window and said in a low voice, Mom, you don't have to pay that. I looked at him, my son, now in his 40s, with gray hairs starting to show. Leo, how long have you known about this? I asked, my voice calm. He hesitated for a moment, then answered, I don't know the details. Ethan just said he needed your help. I nodded, understanding. My son knew, but he didn't have the courage to stand by his mother, and my grandson, Ethan, saw me as a walking wallet, something you just take money from. I poured him a glass of water, then poured one for myself. We sat in silence, saying nothing more. The afternoon sun began to filter through the window, golden and strong, but it didn't warm the kitchen. That night, after Leo left, I sat in the kitchen under the weak, yellow light of the single bulb hanging from the ceiling. From under the bed, I pulled out the old wooden trunk. That trunk had been with me for decades. The lock made a dry click when I opened it. Inside were boxes of yellowed photos. The smell of old paper rushed out, as if bringing back the past. I went through each photo, every memory becoming sharp and clear. One was of Ethan at 5 years old, hugging a little black dog named Buddy, with a huge grin and chubby cheeks. Another was from his first day of high school, standing in the middle of the schoolyard with a brilliant smile. I was in the background, holding a birthday cake, my eyes smiling and on the verge of tears. I also picked up a photo with Lucy, Ethan's mother. She left when the boy was barely 2, without a letter or a goodbye. She just left me, Leo, and Ethan, in our little house in Oak Creek. In those days, I was raising Leo, who had just turned 20, and taking care of Ethan. My job as a seamstress wasn't enough. So I quit and started selling tamales outside the elementary school. Every morning I'd get up at 4 a.m., cook the tamales, wrap them in corn husks, and sell them until noon. Ethan used to follow me, clinging to my legs and asking in a sing-song voice, "Nana, did we sell a lot of tamales today?" I would smile and stroke his head. "Enough to buy you some candy, sweetheart." And he would shout with excitement, "The strawberry ones. I love the strawberry ones." Little by little, I saved up money and opened a small shop next to the house. Ethan was a good student, always at the top of his class. In his senior year of high school, he won a scholarship to study business at USC. The day he left for the city, we had a simple dinner together: rice, pinto beans, and a few slices of avocado. Leo raised his glass of lemonade and said, "Ethan, you have to study hard, make our family proud." Ethan nodded, looking at me. "Nana, I won't let you down." I smoothed his hair. "Nana trusts you, sweetheart. Just focus on your studies." Every night, he would text me, "Just had dinner. Nana, sleep well." But in his second year, everything changed. Ethan sent me a photo with Chloe, his girlfriend. She had dyed blonde hair, lips as red as roses, and a smile that reeked of wealth. I replied, "She's a beautiful girl, Ethan. When are you bringing her to meet me?" He answered curtly, "I'll see." After that, the texts started to become less frequent, a month, then 2, and then nothing. Ethan started calling me grandma instead of the affectionate Nana. Once, I took the bus to visit him in Beverly Hills. It was a long trip. The bus was hot, and I was exhausted but hopeful. When I arrived, Chloe opened the door and stood in the entryway. "Ethan's not here, Grandma," she said, her voice cold and her gaze sharp. I saw Ethan's shoes right by the door, but I just said, "Oh, is that so? Tell him to call me." Chloe nodded and slammed the door in my face. I stood there for a moment, then went back to the station. On the bus, the woman selling tickets recognized me. "Mrs. Miller, were you visiting your grandson? Why are you heading back so soon?" I gave a tired smile. "Yes, but he's busy. I'm on my way back," she nodded. City boys are always busy these days, not like they used to be. A few weeks later, I called Ethan and discovered he had blocked my number. I sat at the kitchen table, stared at the phone for a moment, then put it away. I don't know why I didn't cry. I just felt an emptiness. From then on, news about Ethan came through Leo. One time, Leo came over, sat down for coffee, and said hesitantly, "Mom, Ethan's getting married." I asked him, "Oh, really? When?" He looked down and answered in a low voice, "Next month, in Maui. But I don't think you're invited." I frowned. "Why not? What did he tell you?" Leo sighed. "Chloe said that you wouldn't fit in with the party's elegant atmosphere." Ethan agreed with her. I got up, grabbed a rag, and started wiping down the cupboards, saying, "Oh really? Well, that's their business." Then I went into my room and slammed the door. Leo managed to shout, "Mom, don't be mad at Ethan," but I didn't answer. The next morning, I turned on the old computer, the one I bought with the money I earned selling tamales years ago. I opened Excel, made a spreadsheet, and entered each item. Wedding in Maui, $90,000. Honeymoon in Venice, $60,000. I added a column for payment dates and vendor names. I copied every line from the invoice carefully, not missing a single letter. At the bottom of the table, I wrote, "I will not pay for this, but I will know everything." I saved the file and shut down the machine. I took a piece of paper and, by hand, wrote down the entire list of vendors from the invoices. 3 days after receiving the invoices, there were no more calls, not a single word, not a new letter. The house in Oak Creek remained silent, only the wind rustling through the potted plants on the patio. I continued with my normal life. In the morning, I'd ride my bike to the market, buy some vegetables, a few pounds of beans, and come back to cook. That day, I stopped by Tanya's fruit stand. She saw me and smiled, a ripe mango in her hand. "Caroline, is it true Ethan's getting married in Hawaii? How fancy is that? Are you getting your outfit ready to go? I just smiled faintly, shook my head, and paid for a few pounds of oranges. No, Tanya, I don't think I'll be going. She frowned, curious. What, your grandson is getting married and you're not going to be there? I picked up my bag and turned to leave. It's a long story, my friend. I'll tell you later, Tanya shouted from behind. Caroline, if you need anything, you let me know. You hear? I nodded and kept walking. I didn't want to say anything more. Back at home, I sat at the table, opened the old computer, and pulled up the Excel sheet from the other day. I added a new column, date of contact. Then I took out the invoices and started calling each number. First up was Sea of Love Wedding Co., the event planning company. A young-sounding receptionist answered, "Hello, Sea of Love, how can I help you?" I replied in a calm voice, "This is Caroline Miller. I'm calling to inquire about the wedding contract for Ethan Davis." She responded quickly, "Oh yes, the contract for Mr. Davis and Miss Chloe. Right. I'll transfer you to Veronica, the planner in charge." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. "Thank you, I'll wait." But then she added, "You're the one paying for it, correct? Your grandson mentioned your name." I gripped the phone tighter and replied, "Have Veronica call me back." Then I called La Cascata Blu, the villa in Venice. A man named Marco answered, speaking English. I spoke slowly. "This is Caroline Miller. I'm calling to ask about a reservation for Ethan Davis and Chloe." Marco hesitated for a moment, then replied, "Yes, there is a reservation for 10 nights, starting on the 22nd. They've paid a 10% deposit. The remainder is due before their arrival." I asked, "Who made the reservation? Does my name appear on the contract?" Marco answered, "No, ma'am. Only the names Ethan and Chloe are on it. But Ethan said would be taking care of the rest." I nodded, jotting down the information. "Thank you, Marco. I'll call if I need anything else," he said. "Of course, ma'am. Call anytime." In the afternoon, Leo stopped by the house, carrying an old stand-up fan, its cord all tangled. He came in and set it on the floor. "Mom, I brought this. It's getting so hot. Use this for now." I looked at the fan and gave a slight smile. "Thanks, honey, but this thing must be pretty loud, right?" Leo nodded, smiling. "Yeah, a little noisy, but it moves the air well. I'll fix it up for you later." I pointed to the table, where the bill still lay. "Have you seen this?" Leo glanced at it and said, "They're already doing rehearsals for the wedding down in Hawaii. Mom, Chloe is posting videos to her stories every day." I told him, "Pull one up for me to see." Leo took out his phone and played a video. Ethan, in a white suit, smiling, raising a glass of wine, with a live band playing off to the side. Chloe was next to him, in a shimmering dress, beaming with joy. I stared at the screen, not seeing myself in any corner of that celebration. I asked Leo, "How long have you known about the bill?" He lowered his head and answered in a soft voice, "About 2 weeks. Ethan said that you would want to help." I nodded without saying anything more. Leo hesitated. "Mom, I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner." I waved my hand. "It's in the past. Do you want some water?" He shook his head. "No, I have to go. If you need anything, call me." I went out to the garden, picked up the watering can, and began to water the hibiscus pots one by one. Then I wiped down the wooden table on the porch, the one where Ethan used to do his homework as a child. The table was covered in scratches, but I cleaned it carefully, as if trying to preserve something. That night, the phone rang. It was Veronica, the planner from Sea of Love, with her warm, southern accent. "Mrs. Miller, this is Veronica. You were asking about the wedding, right?" I replied, "Yes, I want to understand the details of Ethan Davis's contract." She said, "Yes, the wedding is on the 20th, for 150 guests, premium package. The total is $90,000, but they've only made a down payment of $25,000. I asked, "Who signed the contract?" Veronica answered, "Ethan and Chloe. But Ethan said you would be covering the rest." I smiled faintly. "He said that, did he? Can you send me a copy of the contract?" She hesitated. "Of course, but first I need your authorization." I told her, "Just send it. I'll be waiting." I hung up, opened the spreadsheet, and added a column. Note: contract in Ethan's name, balance pending. It was almost 9 o'clock. At night, I dialed the unknown number again, but no one answered. I put the phone down and looked out the window. I knew they would soon understand what was coming. I started the next day by riding my bike to the internet cafe near the elementary school. The sun was just rising, casting a golden light on the dirt path. Natalie's shop was already open, the old computers humming. I handed her a list of contacts and said, "Natalie, print me 2 copies of this, and be careful the ink doesn't smudge." The girl glanced at it, her eyes lit up, and she asked, "Mrs. Miller, is this list for the wedding? They say your grandson is having a huge party." I smiled slightly and replied, "Something like that, honey. But it's better if you just print and don't ask too many questions." Natalie nodded, smiling. "Yes, ma'am, I'll get them for you right now. Do you want me to put any kind of seal on them?" I shook my head. "That won't be necessary, as long as they're printed clearly." After printing, I stopped by the town post office, where Mrs. Anna sells envelopes and stamps. I chose some sturdy, large envelopes, big enough to hold documents. Anna saw me and asked, "Caroline, are you sending a letter far away? These envelopes are for important documents." I nodded and replied, "Yes, they are important documents." "Thanks, Anna," she smiled. "You're always so careful. Will you be needing stamps?" I shook my head. "Not yet. Let me think about it." Back at home, I sat at the kitchen table, spread out the printouts, and took a pen to note the date and time I would call each vendor. I made a separate sheet to track payments, who had paid, who hadn't, and how much was outstanding. Everything had to be clear, with no omissions. In the afternoon, I picked up the phone and called Joyful Blooms in Hawaii. The flower supplier, Mrs. Leela, the owner, answered immediately with a cheerful voice. "Hello, Joyful Blooms. Who's speaking?" I replied, "This is Caroline Miller, Ethan Davis's grandmother. I'm calling to ask about the flower order for his wedding." Leela let out a laugh. "Oh, the fancy wedding in Maui, right. The kids ordered imported flowers from Holland, very expensive, almost $10,000. They've only paid a $250 deposit and promised to pay the rest in 10 days. I took a note and asked, "Who placed the order? Does my name appear on it?" Leela hesitated for a moment. Ethan and Chloe placed the order. But Ethan said you were going to pay the balance. Isn't that right?" I smiled faintly. "That's not right, Leela. Can you send me a copy of the order?" She replied, "Of course. I'll email it to you. But listen, ma'am, the kids have to pay soon, or I'm canceling the order." I nodded. "Thank you, Lila. Just send it." Then I called Photolux Studios, the photography service. A man named Ivan answered, his voice irritated. "Hello, Photolux, who is this?" I said, "This is Caroline Miller, Ethan Davis's grandmother. I'm calling about the photography contract for the wedding." Ivan huffed. "That contract? I'm waiting on the payment, but this Chloe person has been giving me the runaround. What do you need?" I answered coolly. "I just want to understand the situation. Who signed the contract?" Ivan grumbled. "Ethan and Chloe signed it, but they said you were going to pay the remaining $15,000. Isn't that right?" I replied calmly. "I didn't sign anything, Ivan. Send me the contract." He got annoyed. "What do you mean you didn't? Your grandson made it very clear that you would cover it." I repeated, "Send me the contract. I'm waiting." Ivan sighed. "Fine, I'll email it to you. But if they don't pay, there are no photos." I hung up and wrote on my sheet, "Unpaid contract in Ethan and Chloe's name." I made several more calls, from music services to the car rental company. They all said the same thing. Ethan assured them I would pay. I noted every detail, not leaving out a single word. At 6 in the evening, I stopped, prepared a pitcher of fresh hibiscus iced tea, the scent of the flower filling the kitchen. I took a glass out to the porch, sat in the wooden chair, and watched the cloudy sky as a cool breeze blew. Just then, Lucy, my old sewing partner, walked by. Seeing me, she came over. She sat down, smiling. "Carolyn, why are you out here all alone? Is something weighing on you?" I briefly told her about the invoices and Ethan. Lucy listened and patted my shoulder. "Oh no, and that boy you raised does this to you." "I have an idea, Caroline. My daughter Tessa does photography now. She shoots weddings. Do you want to hire her?" I asked her, "Does she take good pictures, Lucy?" She shook her head and let out a laugh. "Do you want me to put any kind of seal on them?" I shook my head. "That won't be necessary, as long as they're printed clearly." After printing, I stopped by the town post office, where Mrs. Anna sells envelopes and stamps. I chose some sturdy, large envelopes, big enough to hold documents. Anna saw me and asked, Caroline, are you sending a letter far away? These envelopes are for important documents. I nodded and replied, yes, they are important documents. Do you want me to put any kind of seal on them? I shook my head. That won't be necessary, as long as they're printed clearly. After printing, I stopped by the town post office, where Mrs. Anna sells envelopes and stamps. I chose some sturdy, large envelopes, big enough to hold documents. Anna saw me and asked, Caroline, are you sending a letter far away? These envelopes are for important documents. I nodded and replied, yes, they are important documents. Thanks, Anna, she smiled. You're always so careful. Will you be needing stamps? I shook my head. Not yet. Let me think about it. Back at home, I sat at the kitchen table, spread out the printouts, and took a pen to note the date and time I would call each vendor. I made a separate sheet to track payments, who had paid, who hadn't, and how much was outstanding. Everything had to be clear, with no omissions. In the afternoon, I picked up the phone and called Joyful Blooms in Hawaii. The flower supplier, Mrs. Leela, the owner, answered immediately with a cheerful voice. Hello, Joyful Blooms. Who's speaking? I replied, this is Caroline Miller, Ethan Davis's grandmother. I'm calling to ask about the flower order for his wedding. Leela let out a laugh. Oh, the fancy wedding in Maui. Right, the kids ordered imported flowers from Holland. Very expensive, almost $10,000. They've only paid a $250 deposit and promised to pay the rest in 10 days. I took a note and asked, who placed the order? Does my name appear on it? Leela hesitated for a moment. Ethan and Chloe placed the order. But Ethan said you were going to pay the balance. Isn't that right? I smiled faintly. That's not right, Leela. Can you send me a copy of the order? She replied, of course. I'll email it to you. But listen, ma'am, the kids have to pay soon, or I'm canceling the order. I nodded. Thank you, Lila. Just send it. Then I called Photolook Studios, the photography service. A man named Ivan answered, his voice irritated. Hello, Photolux, who is this? I said, this is Caroline Miller, Ethan Davis's grandmother. I'm calling about the photography contract for the wedding. Ivan huffed. That contract, I'm waiting on the payment, but this Chloe person has been giving me the runaround. What do you need? I answered coolly. I just want to understand the situation. Who signed the contract? Ivan grumbled. Ethan and Chloe signed it, but they said you were going to pay the remaining $15,000. Isn't that right? I replied calmly. I didn't sign anything, Ivan. Send me the contract. He got annoyed. What do you mean you didn't? Your grandson made it very clear that you would cover it. I repeated, send me the contract. I'm waiting. Ivan sighed. Fine, I'll email it to you. But if they don't pay, there are no photos. I hung up and wrote on my sheet, unpaid contract in Ethan and Chloe's name. I made several more calls, from music services to the car rental company. They all said the same thing. Ethan assured them I would pay. I noted every detail, not leaving out a single word. At 6 in the evening, I stopped, prepared a pitcher of fresh hibiscus iced tea, the scent of the flower filling the kitchen. I took a glass out to the porch, sat in the wooden chair, and watched the cloudy sky as a cool breeze blew. Just then, Lucy, my old sewing partner, walked by. See, they haven't been paid in full. They might pull out. Tessa jotted down notes quickly and asked, do you also want photos of the staff packing up, tables being disassembled, flowers being taken away? I nodded. Exactly. If everything falls apart, you photograph all of it. She nodded, taking another sip of her coffee. Of course, I'll also get shots if the bride and groom argue. But ma'am, this will cost you. I charge $2,500 for gas and equipment. Does that work for you? I replied immediately. That's fine, Tessa. I'll pay you in cash, but I need those photos. She nodded. Done. You give me $1,000 upfront, and the rest when I deliver the material. Before leaving the cafe, Tessa asked, how do you want the photos delivered? Email, USB, or print? I shook my head. Print them all, Tessa. Don't send them online. What comes easy is easily lost. She nodded, writing in her notebook. Understood. I'll print them, pack them securely, and send them to you after the wedding. I extended my hand, and she shook it firmly, not smiling, but with a sharp gaze. I knew I had just found a reliable ally. John, the waiter, walked past our table, saw us shaking hands, and laughed. What are you two plotting so seriously? getting ready for the wedding. Tessa glanced at him, joking. A wedding, John. It's more like we're going to take pictures to ruin it. The kid burst out laughing. Oh, Tessa, you're one of a kind. I laughed too, stood up, paid for my drink, and left the cafe. The weather was still cool, the bougainvillea swaying gently in the wind. A week before the wedding, I was sitting on the porch, a glass of hibiscus tea in my hand, listening to the wind rustle through the potted plants. The clock read 9:12 p.m. when the phone rang. An unknown, unlisted number. I answered but didn't speak, just waited. On the other end, Ethan's voice came through, rushed, and a little shaky. Mrs. Miller, Grandma, I know what you're doing. You called the vendors, didn't you? Why are you meddling like this? I took a deep breath and answered calmly, Ethan, I was just asking questions to get some clarity. Why does my name appear on your invoice? He stammered, hesitant. Grandma, I thought you'd want to help. I didn't mean any harm. I frowned and spoke slowly. Help. You don't invite me to your wedding, but you expect me to pay $150,000. Explain. That to me. Ethan was silent for a few seconds. Then I heard murmurs. Another voice cut in. It was Chloe, every word clear and sharp. Mrs. Miller, we just thought you wouldn't mind. Besides, you weren't planning on coming anyway. Everyone knows you don't really fit in with the sophisticated, urban crowd. I gripped the phone tightly and asked, so I'm good enough to pay, but not to attend? No one answered. The silence stretched on, only the sound of heavy breathing on the other end. Then Chloe spoke, her tone softer, as if trying to smooth things over. Grandma, we've been so busy, we've been planning this for a month. You just need to pay on time. Actually, that would also be a way for you to be present at the wedding, even if you don't come. I let out a small, mirthless laugh. Be present with money, Chloe. Do you think I'm a bank? She hurried to say. No, Grandma, we didn't mean that. It's just that we need your help. Ethan interrupted, nervously. Grandma, I'm sorry if we made you feel bad, but please, help us. We'll be so grateful. I didn't reply. I just hung up, slowly but firmly. I remained seated in the wooden chair, looking out at the dark yard. I wasn't angry or sad. I just felt a void, as if something had fallen and been lost in the depths. That night, I pulled out the wooden trunk again. I opened it, took out all the photos of Ethan, and laid them on the table. There was one where he was smiling next to his dog buddy, another with his middle school graduation cap. I chose a few, the most precious ones, from when he still called me Nana, when he still hugged me every time he came home. The rest I put in a box and locked the trunk. I didn't want to see them anymore. I picked up my phone and texted, Tessa, go early. There's no time for regrets. The message was marked read in less than a minute. She replied, understood, ma'am. I'll be in Maui before the wedding day. The photos will be just as you asked. I texted back, good, be careful. Don't let anyone suspect. Tessa sent a thumbs up icon, brief but firm. I put the phone away, got up, and turned off the porch light. The night was calm, only the sound of crickets in the garden. The next morning, I went to the market early to buy more beans and corn to make tamales. Tanya saw me and asked, Caroline, are you getting ready for the wedding? They say the party in Maui is going to be first class. I smiled faintly and replied, not yet, Tanya. I don't think I'll be going. She frowned. What? Your grandson didn't invite you. I shook my head, lifting my basket. Family matters, my friend. Let the young people handle it. Tanya patted my shoulder. Caroline, if you need anything, you just tell me. Okay, I nodded. Thanks, my friend, I'm fine. When I got home, I opened the spreadsheet and reviewed the vendor list. I called Leela at Joyful Blooms and asked Leela, how's Ethan's flower order coming along? She replied cheerfully, Mrs. Miller. Those kids haven't paid another cent. They don't pay in 5 days. I'm canceling the order and the flowers go back to the warehouse. I nodded. Thank you, Leela. Do everything according to the contract. Lila laughed. Don't you worry, I'm not letting those kids get away without paying. I hung up and noted on the sheet, Joyful Blooms, unpaid, possible cancellation. Then I called Ivan at Photolook Studios. He answered in his usual, slightly annoyed tone. Mrs. Miller, you again. The kids still haven't paid. I replied, I know, Ivan. I just want to confirm whose name is on the contract. He huffed. Ethan and Chloe, you didn't sign anything, right? I nodded. That's right. I didn't sign. I'm not paying. Follow the contract. Ivan sighed. All right, Ma, single quotes, M. Dot. If they don't pay, I'm pulling the photography team. I told him, thank you, Ivan. Send me a copy of the contract, please. He muttered. Yeah, I'll send it. But this is getting complicated. I sat back down and wrote on the sheet. Photo looks, unpaid, possible withdrawal. Everything was starting to become clear. Ethan and Chloe would soon understand that not everyone lets themselves be used. On the morning of the wedding, I woke up early as always, put on my gray-blue linen clothes, worn but still fitting well. I prepared a pitcher of lemonade with mint. The fresh scent filled the small kitchen. I placed the pitcher carefully on the table, next to a plate with leftover cornbread from the day before. I sat down, checked my phone, and saw a message from Tessa at 7 a.m. Mrs. Miller, I'm at the resort. The side gate is open. The trucks are unloading. I took out the small recorder and listened again to the voicemail from Leela, the owner of Joyful Blooms, that she'd sent yesterday. Mrs. Miller, the kids haven't paid another cent. If they don't pay today, we're taking all the flowers back. Her voice was firm, without a hint of doubt. I nodded, put the recorder away, and pulled out the spreadsheet to review each item. At noon, the phone vibrated twice, 2 missed calls from an unknown number. Then, a text from Veronica. The wedding planner appeared. Mrs. Miller, Chloe asked me to contact you urgently. There's a problem with the invoices. Please answer. I looked at the screen and left the phone on the table without replying. Instead, I opened the spreadsheet and, with a red pen, marked each line. Maui wedding, not paid. Joyful Blooms, not paid. Photo looks photos, not paid. Each line in red was a statement, clear and uncompromising. Tessa sent another message with 3 photos. The first showed resort employees dismantling tables and chairs, stacked haphazardly. The second, the Joyful Blooms truck turning around as it left the gate. The third, Chloe next to Ethan. She was pointing a finger, her face red, and Ethan had his head down, rubbing his forehead. I enlarged the image, looked closely, and then put the phone away. In the afternoon, Tessa sent another photo, a row of luxurious chandeliers in the wedding hall, but still unlit, everything in semi-darkness. There wasn't a single guest, just a few scattered employees standing around. I wrote to her, very good, Tessa. Take more if anything else happens. She replied immediately, of course, ma'am. This is already spiraling out of control. I'm going to get as many as I can. I poured myself a glass of the lemon mint water over ice and turned on the old radio on the kitchen shelf. A classic, sad ballad was playing, the singer's voice deep and sorrowful, perfect for the moment. I had dinner alone, a few pieces of cornbread and some cooked beans, for the first time in many years. I didn't feel like anything was missing, even though I was alone in the kitchen. On the table, I placed the only photo I had left of Ethan, taken when he was 8. The boy was hugging a puppy, with a clean, innocent smile. I looked at the photo, then turned it face down on the table. The phone vibrated again. It was Veronica, I answered. Her voice sounded frantic. Mrs. Miller, where are you? Chloe is losing her mind. The flower vendor left, and they've taken the tables and chairs back to... I replied calmly, Veronica, I didn't sign a contract. I didn't pay. Ask Ethan and Chloe whose names are on the contract. She stammered. Yes, it's in both of their names. But Ethan said you would take care of it. I cut her off. I am not taking care of it, Veronica. I wasn't invited. I'm not paying. The contract should be honored. She sighed. Mrs. Miller, the wedding is going to be ruined. Are you really not going to help? I told her. I'm helping by staying out of it. Thanks for calling. I hung up. Leo texted at 6 in the evening. Mom, I heard the wedding is a disaster. Do you know anything? I replied. Ask Ethan. I have nothing to do with it. He called me immediately, his voice tense. Mom, Ethan called me saying you caused all of this. What did you say to the vendors? I answered. Leo, I only asked who signed and who was supposed to pay. I didn't sign, so I'm not paying. Tell Ethan to take responsibility. He hesitated. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't think it would end like this. I told him, it's okay, son. Let them figure it out. I hung up and went back to the table, reviewing the spreadsheet one last time. Tessa sent another message. Mrs. Miller, Chloe just threw a glass at an employee. I got the shot. I'll send it later. I replied, good, Tessa. Keep shooting everything. I put the phone down, took a sip of the lemon mint water, and listened to the ballad end. The kitchen was silent, save for the ticking of the clock. I knew this wedding would never be forgotten, but not for its joy. Around 11 the next morning, the sky was still overcast, filled with gray clouds, with no sign of the sun. I was cleaning the house, the broom scraping against the floor, the scent of cleaner floating gently through the kitchen. Suddenly, there were loud, urgent knocks that made the old wooden door tremble. I stopped, leaned the broom in a corner, and went to peek through the slit in the curtain. It was Ethan, his white shirt wrinkled, his hair matted with sweat, his face gaunt as if he hadn't slept all night. Behind him stood a stranger in a wrinkled gray suit, holding a black briefcase. I knew instantly he must be the lawyer for Chloe's family. I opened the door, but didn't step aside. I stood right in the threshold, my arms crossed, looking directly at Ethan. He didn't greet me, just blurted out in anger, "Mrs. Miller, why did you do that? You ruined my wedding." I replied calmly, "Ruined it? I wasn't invited. I didn't go. I didn't pay. Tell me, how exactly did I ruin it?" Ethan's eyes widened with fury, his voice cracked and rose. "You called all the vendors and they canceled everything. The flowers, the tables, the music, they all left. You did this on purpose, didn't you?" I shook my head, speaking slowly. "Ethan, I only asked a few questions. I asked who signed the contracts, who was supposed to pay. Now you answer me, whose names are on those contracts?" Ethan stammered. His lips moved, but no words came out. The stranger stepped forward, extending his hand, and said in a grave voice, "Mrs. Miller, I'm Stephen Vance, legal counsel for Miss Chloe's family. We need to have a serious discussion." I didn't shake his hand, just nodded. "Speak, Mr. Vance, what's so serious?" He cleared his throat and spoke. "You contacted the vendors, creating contractual chaos, which has resulted in considerable financial losses. Chloe's family is considering suing you for tortious interference." I let out a small laugh, pulled a copy of the invoice from my pocket, and held it out to them. "Look, here it is. This invoice was sent to me, but I didn't sign a thing. No agreement, no signature. If they want to sue, let them." Ethan looked at the paper, his face flushed, his voice trembling. "I didn't think you'd go this far. I just thought you'd want to help me. I cut him off, my voice hard. "Help? You didn't invite me. You stopped calling me Nana like you used to. But you send me a bill for $150,000. What do you think I am, Ethan?" He lowered his head, uncomfortable. I just thought you had money, that you wouldn't mind." "I was wrong, Mrs. Miller." I shook my head again, pressing on. "You were wrong. Then who asked them to put my name on the invoice? Tell me." Ethan fell silent, his gaze fixed on the floor. Mr. Vance intervened, in a conciliatory tone. "Mrs. Miller, your grandson assured the vendors that you would cover the payments. It was a verbal commitment, and that carries weight." I looked him straight in the eye and replied, "The verbal commitment was Ethan's, not mine. Ask him if the contracts bear my signature." Vance turned to Ethan, serious. "Ethan, clarify this. What did you tell the vendors?" Ethan mumbled, I told them my grandmother was going to pay the rest. I thought she'd say yes." I cut him off. "Say yes. You didn't ask me, you didn't invite me, and you still put my name down. What do you think, that I'm an ATM?" Ethan looked up, his voice rushed. "Grandma, I'm sorry. I didn't mean any harm. But now everything is ruined and Chloe is furious with me." Vance sighed, addressing me. "Mrs. Miller, I understand you didn't sign anything, but your actions caused damages. Could we resolve this amicably?" I answered firmly, "Amicably. I didn't sign. I didn't pay. I didn't interfere. The contracts are in Ethan and Chloe's names. Let them handle it. I have nothing to do with it." Ethan interjected, almost pleading, "Grandma, help me. I'll pay you back later, I promise." I shook my head. "Ethan, you're a grown man now. Take responsibility for your own actions. I am not your wallet." I took a step back, placed my hand on the door, and said one last thing. "The next time you come, bring some respect. Otherwise, don't bother knocking." Ethan looked at me, his eyes glistening. "Grandma, I'm your grandson. You can't turn your back on me like this." I replied in a low but firm voice, "You're my grandson, but you forgot about your grandmother a long time ago. Now leave." Mr. Vance took him by the arm and whispered, "Let's go, Ethan. This is getting us nowhere." They turned and walked down the dirt path. Ethan looked back one last time, his voice breaking. "I don't want to lose you, Grandma." I didn't answer. I just closed the door slowly, not with force, but firmly enough for them to understand. Inside the house, I left the door ajar to let in the cool, light breeze. I sat at the kitchen table, opened the spreadsheet, and reviewed the vendor list again. They all said the same thing. The contract does not include the name Carolyn Miller. I closed the laptop and poured a glass of lemonade with mint from the pitcher on the table. The sound of birds in the yard mixed with the sound of children's bicycles passing on the street. I looked toward the door and saw the clouds moving slowly across the gray sky. There was no one standing in front of the house anymore. A week after the wedding was canceled, I was sitting on the porch watering some hibiscus pots when I heard the mail carrier's motorcycle stop at the gate. He handed me a small package, neatly wrapped in twine, addressed from Tessa Gordon. I thanked him, took it to the kitchen, and set it on the table. I carefully untied the string. Inside was a shiny black USB drive and a stack of printed photos, neatly arranged in a paper envelope. I opened the envelope and looked through them one by one. Bridal bouquets being hauled away in the back of a truck, empty tables without a single guest, a few men in suits peeking out from the resort entrance, and an image of Ethan arguing with Chloe by a pond, pointing fingers at each other, their faces tense. The last photo showed the wedding stage, the chandelier unlit, everything empty under a fiery red sunset. I arranged the photos, put them in an old album, and labeled it with a black marker, Justice. I plugged the USB into the computer and watched the videos. The recordings were clear: employees dismantling tables, Chloe yelling at someone, Ethan standing with his head in his hands. When I was done, I removed the USB and put it away in a drawer. That same day, Leo came to the house with a bag of still warm food, tamales wrapped in corn husks, the aroma of corn filling the kitchen. He also placed a printed sheet on the table, with a large headline, $1 million wedding canceled at last minute due to family issues. Leo sat down, glanced at the newspaper, and murmured, "Mom, this is everywhere now." I looked at him and asked, "What do you see there, Leo?" He looked up, his eyes red. "I see that I was wrong, Mom. Wrong for a long time. I let you carry everything, let you support Ethan, and I thought that was normal." I nodded, pushing the plate of tamales toward him. "Eat, son, it's over now." Leo took a tamale but didn't eat it right away. He continued, "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't defend you when Ethan did that. I should have talked to him sooner." I poured him a glass of hibiscus tea and replied, "Leo, I don't blame you. Ethan is a grown man. He chooses his own path." He looked at me, doubt in his voice. "Mom, do you want us to move? I could move in with you. Then this house wouldn't be so empty." I smiled faintly and touched his shoulder. "Let me think about it, son. I'm used to this house." Leo nodded, took a bite of the tamale, and said, "You cook so well, Mom. When he was a kid, Ethan loved these tamales, remember?" I nodded. "Yes, he always asked for one more." We ate together, for the first time in many years. The small kitchen table, the yellow light, the radio playing an old ballad softly. I looked at Leo and saw he had aged, with gray in his hair. He told me, "Mom, I'm going to talk to Ethan. I'm going to tell him to apologize to you." I shook my head. "No, Leo, let him figure it out on his own. I don't need an apology." He sighed. "Mom, you are so much stronger than I am." I smiled. "I'm not strong, son. I just live by being who I am." That night I opened the wardrobe, took out my savings passbook, and checked each amount. The money from the little shop, from the days selling tamales, was enough for me to live comfortably for the rest of my life. I made a careful note and put the passbook back in its place. The phone vibrated, a message from Tessa. "Mrs. Miller, I was hired to photograph a 40th wedding anniversary. A Mrs. Eleanor Corden. Is she a friend of yours?" I replied, "Yes, an old friend. Her husband cheated on her, and now she's living like a queen. Take beautiful photos of her, Tessa." The young woman replied immediately, "Yes, I'll do my best work. Mrs. Corden looks very elegant. I'm sure she'll be gorgeous in the photos." I wrote back, "Good. As long as you do as good a job as you did in Maui, I'll be happy." Tessa sent a smiling emoji. I looked out the window at the garden. The rainy season had passed, and the hibiscus flowers were blooming a deep red, like old blood but still full of life. I got up, turned off the kitchen light, and let the moonlight stream in through the crack in the door. The next morning, I went to the market and ran into Mrs. Tanya at the fruit stand. Seeing me, she asked immediately, "Carolyn, is it true that Ethan's wedding was ruined? The newspapers won't stop talking about it." I smiled faintly as I picked out some mangoes. Yes, family matters. Ma, let the kids sort it out themselves. Tanya frowned. My, but you're so calm. If it were me, I'd be furious. I shook my head. Furious for what, Tanya? Everyone learns in their own way. She patted my shoulder. Caroline, you really are strong. If you need anything, you just let me know, okay? I nodded. Thank you, I'm fine. Back at home, I took out the Justice album and went through each photo. Each one was a piece of history, not for revenge, but to remind myself that I did the right thing. I put the album away, picked up the watering can, and went out to the garden to work. The church bells rang in the distance, solitary but clear. A month after the wedding disaster, I was still waking up early as always. Just as the sun was peeking over Oak Creek Hilltop with the watering can in hand, I walked through the garden, watering each red hibiscus pot, trimming some dry branches, and placing a few new pots along the porch. The smell of damp earth and flowers hung in the air, mixed with the song of birds in the mango tree. I wiped my hands and sat in the wooden chair, watching the golden light fall across the yard. Leo started visiting me every week without fail. He always brought something to eat. Sometimes cornbread, sometimes a bag of fresh oranges. We would sit on the porch, drink hibiscus tea, and talk about many things, but almost never about Ethan. One time, Leo asked me, Mom, have you heard anything from Ethan? I shook my head and replied, No, son, I've left him to handle things on his own. Leo nodded, his voice low. I've called him, but he doesn't answer. Maybe he's ashamed. I poured him more tea and said, That's in the past. Leo, let things run their course. He nodded, took the glass, and drank a sip. Mom, I'm going to come by more often. I don't want you to always be alone. I smiled calmly. I'm used to it, son, but it's nice when you visit. I started taking sewing orders again. Mrs. Lucy recommended me to some young women who wanted wedding dresses, long church gowns, or veils. A girl named Isabella came to the house with a sample of white fabric, saying, Mrs. Miller, I want a princess-style wedding dress, very dramatic. I smiled, taking the fabric in my hands. A princess? You're not even getting married yet and you're already dreaming like that. Isabella laughed happily. I'm not getting married, but I want to feel the excitement, ma'am. You sew beautifully. Everyone says so. I nodded and started taking her measurements. All right, I'll make you the most beautiful dress. One afternoon, I sat with Isabella on the porch, cutting fabric, sewing each stitch. The girl looked at me and asked, Mrs. Miller, have you ever made wedding dresses for your family? I stopped sewing and replied, Yes, my dear. But they weren't worn. Isabella hesitated for a moment. What do you mean they weren't worn? Were they ugly? I smiled faintly and continued sewing. It's not always because they're ugly, dear. Sometimes people just don't know how to appreciate things. The girl didn't ask any more questions, just quietly helped me remove loose threads. I looked at her and smiled. You have a good hand, Isabella. Have you ever thought about opening a workshop with me later? Isabella burst out laughing. Really, ma'am? But I'm so clumsy. All I know how to do is remove threads. I nodded. Everything can be learned. With time, you get good at it. That night, I took out a photo of Ethan as a child, one where he was hugging his little wooden guitar and smiling as if he didn't owe the world a thing, and placed it in a picture frame. I put it on my little memorial shelf, next to a small candle. I wasn't angry with Ethan anymore. I just wanted to keep that photo as a lesson for him and for me. On Sunday, I invited Lucy, Tessa, and the two little neighbor girls, Rosa and Marisol, over for dinner. The pot of tamales let off a delicious aroma, and the hibiscus tea, in a glass pitcher on the table, was perfectly sweet. Before we started eating, I stood up with my glass in my hand and said, I used to think I only had one granddaughter, but now, looking around, I see I have several. Tessa, Rosa, Marisol. Not all connections are made by blood, but by love. Lucy burst out laughing and clapped. Well said, Caroline. These girls truly love you, not like some others out there. Tessa nodded and added, Grandma Caroline, taking your picture was my favorite job ever. Whenever you want new portraits, just let me know. Rosa, the little neighbor, interrupted Grandma. Next time make more tamales. They were so good. Marisol nodded vigorously. Yes, Grandma, I already ate 3. I laughed heartily. You rascals. If you finish the whole pot, I'm kicking you out of the house. The whole table erupted in laughter, amidst clattering plates and overlapping voices. That night, at the end of the month, I went to the brick oven behind the house and brought all the prints of Tessa's wedding photos, the ones from the disaster in Maui. I lit a fire and threw in each image, one by one. The flames crackled, devouring the pieces of paper. I stood there, watching as my small shadow was cast firmly on the wall, amidst the night wind. I felt no resentment. I didn't bow my head. I no longer feared losing anything. When the fire died down, I went inside and went to bed. For the first time in many years, I slept deeply, without dreams. The next morning, I went out to the garden and saw the sunlight filtering through the mango tree branches, leaving golden patches on the porch. Tanya passed by, saw me, and said, "Caroline, your garden is so beautiful. How do you get those flowers so red?" I smiled and replied, "Tanya, with water and a little bit of patience." She nodded. "You really know your stuff. Do you want me to bring you some cuttings?" I nodded. "Bring them, my friend. We'll plant them together." She let out a laugh and continued on her way. I returned to my plants, watering peacefully as the church bells rang in the distance, soft but clear. 2 years have passed since Ethan's disastrous wedding. This morning, I woke up early, as always, just as the sun was peeking over Oak Creek Hill. My little house is the same, but now it has new pots of hibiscus, red as fire, at the entrance. I made coffee in the old clay pot, the aroma filling the kitchen, mixing with the song of the birds in the yard. I opened the window to let in the fresh air and went out to the garden, watering can in hand. Leo now lives nearby, just a few blocks away. He bought a small house, fixed it up, and comes to see me every week, sometimes with food, sometimes just to chat. Today he arrived early, with a bag of yellow mangoes in his hand. I saw him and smiled. "Leo, are those mangoes sweet? Don't bring me those sour ones again." He laughed and left the bag on the kitchen table. "Mom, I picked them well this time. They're very sweet. Try one." I cut one and handed him a piece. "You first, son. Let's see how good you are at picking mangoes." Leo took a bite and nodded. "See, Mom? I told you they were good." We sat at the entrance eating mangoes and talking about anything and everything, that the price of beans went up at the market, that his old fan sounds like a motorcycle. Suddenly, Leo fell silent for a moment and then looked at me. "Mom, I have news about Ethan." I put the mango down on the plate. "Tell me, son, how is he?" Leo sighed. "He moved to Florida, works as a manager at a travel agency. Chloe left him right after the wedding. He lives alone now." I nodded and asked, "Has he reached out to you?" Leo replied, "Yes, from time to time. He asks about you, but he doesn't dare to call." I took a sip of my coffee and said, "If he wants to talk, he can come find me himself." Leo nodded. "I understand, Mom. I'll tell him." I still so as before, but now, I get more orders. Isabella, the girl who wanted to dress like a princess, is now engaged, and came back to ask me to make her wedding dress. One afternoon, she came to the house with white silk fabric and a box of flan. "Mrs. Miller, I'm getting married. Can you make me the most beautiful dress, please?" she said, her eyes shining. I laughed, taking the fabric to examine it. "Calm down, I'll make you the most beautiful dress. But tell me, who's the groom?" Isabella smiled. "It's John, the waiter from the Millstone Cafe. He's so good, ma'am." I nodded. "John is a good boy. You chose well." She helped me measure the fabric and asked, "You're coming to my wedding, right? I want you to be there." I smiled. "I'll be there, yes, but don't send me the bill, okay?" Isabella burst out laughing. "Of course not, ma'am. The cake is on me." Tessa also stops by from time to time, with her camera and a new story. One day she arrived with a stack of printed photos. "Mrs. Miller, I took pictures of Mrs. Eleanor's 40th anniversary. They turned out beautifully. Look." I went through them one by one, and there was Eleanor, radiant in the dress I made for her. "Very lovely. Tessa, your photos have sold." I told her. She nodded. "Thanks, ma'am. Mrs. Eleanor says you're the best seamstress she's ever known." I laughed. "She exaggerates, but when you go to take pictures, call me so we can gossip for a bit." Tessa nodded. "Of course. I got hired for a wedding in Palm Beach. Want to come with me?" I shook my head, joking. "No, I'd rather stay here and water the plants. I've had enough of chaotic weddings." Tessa let out a laugh. "Mrs. Miller, you really are a legend." One afternoon, I was on the porch, sewing, when I heard soft knocks on the door. I looked up, and there was Ethan, wearing a blue shirt, his hair short, looking simpler than before. I opened the door and stood there, saying nothing. He lowered his head and murmured, "Mrs. Miller, I came to apologize." I crossed my arms. "Apologize for what, Ethan?" He looked up, his eyes red. "For the wedding, for not inviting you, for thinking you would pay." "I was wrong, ma'am." I nodded and told him, "You're a grown man, Ethan. When you make a mistake, you have to make it right. So, what are you going to do to fix it?" He hesitated. "I want to see you more often. Go back to how it was, when I called you Nana." I looked at him. "Nana isn't here anymore, Ethan, but I'm still here. If you want to come back, then do it, but don't bring any more invoices." Ethan nodded, his voice choked with emotion. "I promise, ma'am, I won't make you suffer anymore." I pointed to the wooden chair. "Sit down. Do you want some water?" He sat, nodding. "Hibiscus tea is fine, ma'am." I went to the kitchen, poured a glass, and brought it out. We sat in silence for a while, and then Ethan said, "Ma'am, I miss the tamales you used to make when I was a kid." I smiled faintly. "Then come by tomorrow, I'll make you some. But you're washing the dishes." He laughed, and for the first time, I saw that old, clean smile. "Yes, I'll wash them, ma'am." That night, I opened the Justice album, took the photo of Ethan with his little wooden guitar, and placed it next to the memorial picture on my shelf. I didn't burn it. I just left it there, as a reminder that everything can start over, if there's a will. I went out to the garden and looked at the hibiscus flowers under the moonlight. The rainy season was over, but a new sun continued to arrive each day. The next day, Lucy came by with a bag of beans. "Tamales, Caroline, let me help you." I laughed. "Of course, you shell the beans, and I'll cook." She let out a laugh. "Deal." "Hey, is it true Ethan is back? How is he?" I replied, "He's learning how to be a grandson again. Slowly, but he's getting there." Lucy patted my shoulder. "Caroline, you are the strongest woman I know." I shook my head. "I'm not strong, Lucy. I just decided to live with an open heart." We sat on the porch shelling beans, laughing, just like in the old days. I felt lighter than ever, because I knew that sunny days were on their way back. I am Carolyn Miller, and if someone were to ask me what lesson I would want to leave from the story of my life, it would be this: kindness should never be mistaken for weakness, and to love does not mean to sacrifice everything blindly. I raised a boy with everything I had, not just money, but time, effort, and heart. But in the end, when he grew up, all he gave me back was an invoice, without an invitation, without a look of gratitude. I didn't get revenge. I just made it clear who owed whom, who forgot whom, and who still held the word family deep in their heart. I didn't need that lavish wedding. I just needed respect. The story we've told is fictional, but it is based on certain real events. The names and places have been changed to protect the identities of those involved. We don't tell this to judge, but in the hope that someone will listen and stop to think, how many mothers are suffering in silence within their own homes? I'm genuinely curious. If it were you, in my place, what would you do? Would you choose to stay silent to keep the peace, or would you dare to confront it all to reclaim your voice? I want to know what you think, because every story is a candle that can light the way for someone else. God always blesses, and I firmly believe that courage leads us to better days. In the meantime, on the end screen, I'm leaving you 2 of the channel's most beloved stories. I promise they will surprise you. Thank you for staying until the end.